You're listening to the Fantasy Wildcard Podcast.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome back into the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty show. We are back with you this week. We got, you know what it is. It's the best three of the Wildcard crew back together. You got me, Mags. Catch me over on X at Hot Seat Mags, and we've got dressed very well. If you're not watching over on YouTube or on the stream on X, a very sharp-looking Ali, FF Dynasty Grill. Mate, how are you?
I'm very, very, very good. For a long time, I'm very good, and yeah, excited for tonight. I am sporting a tie. I had to relearn how to put the tie on because it's been a while. But yeah, it's a special show tonight. That'll be coming up in a little while. But just want to shout out some special people as well. The Wildcard Rewind crew. Go give that podcast a listen because it is absolutely fantastic. And so I want to pay a little bit of homage to the three of them. Lewis, Paul, and Hannah. With a little bit of a rhyme myself, I was a bit productive 5 minutes before the show. I'm not going to say what I was doing, but here goes. They have introduced their last two shows with a rhyme, so I thought I'll come up with a rhyme for myself for week 10 going into week 11. So here it is. On the week, Josh Allen threw another pick. Arthur Smith continued to be a dick. A hero emerged named Noah Brown and rescued me from a big frown. An NFC North shootout, Lamar's efforts in vain. Arrive week 11, the return of the breakout star. His name, A-Chain.
Oh, wow. Forget Ali G. We've got Ali C in this. Absolutely. Drop-in bars. Absolutely love it. Kev, mate, how do you even follow that, Kev? I mean, you just want to go home.
You're absolutely right when you call him Ali C. You should ask him about a former email address that he used to use back in the day. But I don't want to disclose too much of his personal information on this show. I'm doing absolutely great. I'm looking forward to the show tonight. We've got, like last week, a little bit of a split show. We're going to focus on one really big topic to begin, and then we've got some of a sprinkle of joy toward the end. So, yeah, can't wait to jump in, lads.
Yeah, can't wait. We've got the big topic, which is, we're obviously reviewing week 10, but also you may have noticed when we spoke about it, Ali's got a tie on. It's because it's the Fantasy Wildcard mid-season fantasy awards, everybody. Cue applause music, cue fireworks, cue the raptures of excitement, right? We're going to have a couple of awards that we're going to give out, and we'll chat a little bit about them to see if we agree with the nominees for each award. And we're going to kick things off with MVP.
Yes, we are. And MVP in the real world is, as we know, it's a quarterback award. But we're not the real world. We're better than the real world. We are the fantasy. So our fantasy star, well, my fantasy star this season, my half-season MVP is Christian McCaffrey. And this is just based on him being an absolute superstar. He's not let anybody down who picked him at the 101. If you let him slip to the 102, 103, shame on you. There was massive talk before the start of the season, especially in, say, non-superflex formats where Christian McCaffrey, should he be the 101? Should it be Cooper Kupp or anybody else? But Christian McCaffrey's proved all the doubters wrong and just continues to absolutely roll on the 49ers with his workhorse role. Just absolutely smashing it. It's give you such a safe baseline every week, but the ceiling is there as well. So just looking from weeks 1 to 10, he is 50 points. If you play PPR formats, which most of my leagues are, he's 50 points clear of second place Raheem Mostert for running backs. And he's averaging 24.5 points per game. He's just never letting you down. He's safe as houses. He's someone that you can put in your lineup, and he's giving you a touchdown every single week other than this past week, which they tried the hardest to give him a touchdown.
Yeah.
But yeah, such a safe pick. Christian McCaffrey for me has to be because he's never let anybody down, not 1 week. He's the superstar. He's my MVP. And I'd like to views otherwise because there is some standout candidates. But boys, have you got Christian McCaffrey? Would he be your MVP, or would you pivot to maybe somebody else?
Yeah, I think he's doing his best impression of Rick Astley, isn't he, at the moment? He's not letting anyone down. I mean, it's an awards show. We love to get a bit of debate, and I've got to admit, I'm kicking off this with your selection of CMC, LA, and I've got to admit, I 100% agree with you on this one. I think, like you mentioned, just that how much of an advantage he's giving you over the field. A-Chain is someone that is similar in fantasy points per game, but he's played about 4 or 5 games, so it's really difficult to distinguish. I think where McCaffrey was going in Dynasty drafts in sort of round 2, sometimes sliding to potentially round 3 right at the top, he's someone that's hit. I think he's someone that literally, if he's on your roster and you're not in the top 4, or if you're not in the top third of your league, what are you doing? Like, he should be nowhere. Even if you're 5th or 6th, like, he's had such an amazing start to the season. If you're still only 5th or 6th, your team's not good enough to compete, in my opinion. So, unless you've had a ridiculous amount of injuries, Jefferson, Richardson, literally 5-6 players, and you've got the big bits to cover them up, potentially. But yeah, if you're not in top 4 and you've got McCaffrey, what are you doing? Move him on to a contender. He's 27. He's done amazing. How long can it last? I think you're playing this season, next season, and for me, he's Dynasty running back 1 on that basis, because how it's going, he's fantastic. But he's 27 years old. If you're not one of those top 4, move on. But I do agree, McCaffrey, MVP.
Yeah, I think the key letter here is the V, right? The value for him. And we spoke about a few weeks ago, just like, I mean, what kind of a wasteland running back is at the minute. And he's like the shining light, right? He's someone that you can really rely on. He's miles ahead of everybody else. So, you've got an immediate advantage. I mean, it's getting close to where starting Christian McCaffrey is like, you're able to almost have like an extra player on your team. It's like the old Travis Kelce. When you played him, it was like having an extra player in your team. He's that good. It's like starting 2 players instead of 1. So I think he's the runaway candidate for MVP, actually, Alex. So I think you've absolutely smashed it there with Christian McCaffrey. And we might have another runaway candidate for Rookie of the Year. Kev, who's your nomination?
Yeah, I think, first of all, there's a lot of candidates this could have gone to if it wasn't for injury. So, the first guy that sprung to mind was Anthony Richardson. I think it was such a small sample, but it did enough to show me that he's a smash for fantasy and for Dynasty. There's guys like A-Chain, who we mentioned just then, who's done incredibly well, but it got me thinking about sort of recency bias and where we're at, and someone that's massively outperformed expectations. I could have gone Puka Nacua. I'm very, very sorry, Matt. Please do not play that clip of me where I absolutely grief him. But I've gone for a guy that he's picking up steam. The market's in on him. He's someone that had concerns a little bit before. He started to slide a little bit in rookie drafts and in his startups, to the point where in rookie drafts, he was considered around about 102, 103. And then by the end of the summer, 105, 106 is where he was the consensus. But he's put all that to bed. He's doing amazing in a tough situation. Someone that's actually the QB1 now, if you're looking at the market. And it's CJ Stroud, someone that's put to bed all the questions about the S2 test and how he's going to fit in the Texans with a defensive-minded manager and that roster. But yeah, he's absolutely reaffirmed all that for me. I think he's someone that can be super confident about, someone that's well outperformed my expectations. And at this stage, he's done enough to be the half-year champion as well. He's played every game. So that's another reason you've got to see it's a bigger sample, so you've got that more confidence.
Yeah, I think Stroud's a really, really good pick here. Like, I mean, whenever he had that first breakout game a couple of weeks ago, you might have thought, okay, let's see what happened. But he's just continued to look better and better and better, right? So I think he's just someone you can put, any rookie you can put in your team, and like that's not a running back and be really happy with. You're just delighted right away. But when it's a quarterback, it just transforms your like entire team. And remember, CJ Stroud was criminally like underdrafted as well. So people were taking him most people were taking him after Bryce Young, despite my best efforts to tell him to stop. So you were probably like a team midway, like, like sort of almost a contender. You're a contender now, thanks to CJ Stroud. Like, he's putting you over the edge and turning your sort of midway, halfway house team into a full-blown contender. So I can't see anyone else that I would give rookie. I think you're right. If Richardson or Edge hadn't played a bit more of a debate, perhaps. But I think CJ Stroud's my rookie of the year as well. Halfway rookie. What are we calling these? Halfway. Whatever.
Half season award. Yeah. I think it has to be CJ Stroud. I actually posted out my awards a couple of weeks ago, and I actually had Puka Nacua on the week of CJ Stroud, then posted his massive game against the Buccaneers, and it certainly flipped that now. Just looking at his stats, he's thrown 15 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, and at the start of the season, you would not have thought that was believable, considering the cast of weapons that he had. We didn't think were amazing. We thought they were average, young, and they've been fantastic. He's really elevated their game. And I want to go as far as to say the Texans are now in the playoffs if it was to finish today. If he gets the Texans into the playoffs and say that miraculously they win a game, I think the MVP's decided by then already. But is he then in the MVP consideration for getting the Texans in the playoffs? Or is that a bit of a stretch? Because, I mean, that's just as impressive as what Jalen Hurts, getting the Eagles the best record in the NFL, or Patrick Mahomes, what he's still doing, Lamar Jackson. I think it's equally just as impressive. So, yeah, he definitely deserves this award. In terms of startups for next season, I think they're fascinating, because if it was to people to do startups right now, I think he would go really high. Like, you're talking above Trevor Lawrence probably right now. He would go probably fairly close to Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert. He's probably in that category for a lot of people now if people were to doing startups now. So it'd be interesting to see how he finishes the season when there's been no expectations on the Texans, and they've leaned heavily on him. He's been fantastic. But when it comes to there's actually expectation and the Texans want to stay in the playoffs, how is he going to perform? So I'm really interested to see how he performs. And if he does continue this romp that he's had right now, he deserves to be in that category for sort of tier 3, perhaps entering tier 2 in terms of dynasty quarterbacks. It's really that impressive.
Yeah, that's exactly where I have him as well. And I think just a great kid as well, right? You hear him speaking, hear him talking after the game, and just seems like a real solid head on the shoulders. Just well deserving of this unanimous Wildcard half season fantasy award. Congratulations, CJ Stroud. Next award coming up is the comeback award. Now, I sort of had a little bit of trouble thinking about, well, how are we going to define this award? I mean, do we talk about somebody obviously like a John Mechie, who's come back from cancer and come back and been able to play in the NFL? Is that the kind of comeback we're talking about? I thought this is a fantasy show. Let's keep it fantasy related. So I'm going to go with a guy that was sort of written off last season and has now come back with a huge amount of fantasy points for your team. And that's Keenan Allen, who is currently, in terms of points per game, wide receiver 2. Just unbelievable year. Linking right back up with Justin Herbert. He was written off last year. I think he finished last year as wide receiver, I want to say 42 last year. And yeah, like I said, now he is sitting only behind, I think, Tyreek Hill in terms of points per game. More points per game than Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, all of those guys. He's just come in and absolutely just smashed it and just looked like the Keenan Allen of old. He doesn't look older at all. If anything, he looks younger than he ever has. So he's my comeback player of the year after, some haters creeping out of the closet last season, but they're back in their place now.
No, I mean, it's fully deserved. Keenan Allen has certainly outperformed any of my expectations. He was doing really well with Mike Williams on the team. They were a great tandem, them two. Was a little bit concerned when Mike Williams went down to injury. Keenan Allen was obviously going to be the focal point. He did drop his points per game a little bit, but he's bounced back, and this week was just incredible against a really good Lions defense. What he done in that massive game, he fully deserves it. He looks just as fit as he ever has. He's a guy that I'm actively trying to buy in terms of my contending teams, because people aren't asking a great deal for Keenan Allen because he's reaching that age, a bit like a Devontae Adams. They're reaching that age where people are just trying to get rid of these wide receivers when they're 30 and over. So, yeah, he's a great pick, really popular guy. He's helping one of my teams where I did trade for him, and I've got him with Herbert, that stack.
Nice.
He's performing really well right now. So, fully deserves this comeback award. I think it's definitely viable for Keenan Allen. It's a great pick.
Yeah, I think you've both made some brilliant points on Keenan Allen. I think he's a worthy winner of this award, because obviously, no matter what I say, it's going to be a 2-1. I think, the Mike Williams injury, I was warming to him as a buy just as that happened, because I felt that he's always been so consistent the way he plays. The sort of age, longevity wasn't as big a factor as it could be on other different player types, but he's done absolutely fantastic that he's so close to Tyreek Hill when you think of how good the top end of wide receiver is and some of the standout performers, some of the younger guys that get a lot of praise, but he's outpacing a lot of those. I think I would have followed the same trail of thought of someone that was an older wide receiver on the way out, and anytime I can give a bit of love to Adam Thielen, I'm going to do that. That would have been my pick.
Nice.
Nice. I think just with moving teams, and I thought it was done, and he's come back and done amazing. But can't argue with Keenan Allen. What a guy!
It's hard to win comeback player of the year when you never really were anything at the start of the campaign, right? Just kidding. We all love Adam Thielen here, obviously. Keenan Allen, and shout out Adam Thielen as well for comeback player of the year nominee on the very prestigious Fantasy Wildcard half-season fantasy awards. And we're going to continue on with breakout player of the year, pitching it back to Ali C in the house.
Indeed, at hotmail.com. And this is where I feel like I could get a little bit of pushback, because when I was doing my list of winners, this is the guy that I picked, and this is probably the one that I got most pushback on, because I just think there's a few options here, but I've just gone for a guy that, with my own eyes on the stat sheet, has just been the definition of a breakout. He's not played the last 4 weeks. So, well, actually 5 weeks, because there's a bye in there. Mm-hmm. It's Devon A-Chain, or however you want to say it. Get the tables. That's what we call him. It's just been amazing, from having no stats, been inactive in week 1, a healthy scratch. He then scratched the field with a 1.9 point game in week 2. And then nobody saw the explosion coming in week 3. Put up a 50 burger, and it just was just amazing after that. 3 games back to back where he averaged 25.4 PPR points per game, which is the number one on the season so far. Yes, he's only played them a few games, but I'm just really, really excited to see him come back this week. And he just it fits in with Miami Dolphins struggling somewhat when they've lost the big games. Just when Devon A-Chain's not been there, especially you think about the Chiefs game when they were just wanting that explosive runner. He just looks incredible, whether it's running the ball with his small frame or catching the ball and running for 50 yards. Nobody can catch him. This is my definition of a breakout, someone that's come from, he didn't have zero draft capital, because I think I was taking him at the back end of round 1, early round 2 with confidence, and we were really high on him. So I think we have to give ourselves a bit of a pat on the back that we've got him in loads of places, and just really happy with how he progressed and just what he's showing now, and just into the future. He's already, for me, I had him as a top 5 Dynasty running back just because of his age, what he's already shown, the future, what offense he's in. You got Raheem Mostert, who looks like he's running out of steam. He's not going to be there probably next year. A-Chain is going to have this backfield, and he's going to explode as long as he can keep himself healthy. So for me, it's going to be Devon A-Chain just because of that defines breakout for me. But I can certainly understand if you go a different way for this pick.
Yeah, breakout's a tough term, isn't it? Like, do you go for someone that's value's risen the most, a bit like a wild card that we do? Do you go for someone that's literally come from nowhere? or is it someone that's established that's just outperformed expectations? So I think we're probably going to get 3D fans here, which do the right thing, Mags, make that wish come true. But yeah, first of all, just on A-Chain, like he's done fantastic well. If we're looking at just rookies who've massively outperformed, I think he's won based on our rookie mock draft last week, and also Puka Nacua was the other. They're the two that have risen the most in just from sort of thinking about it really briefly. But a guy I want to shine a light on for breakout is someone that I didn't think could do what he's doing. I couldn't see it happening in the offense with his teammates and how it was looking. AJ Brown, Eagles, he's now firmly in that conversation for getting right up there, wide receiver 3 spot, maybe even higher. We might have a little debate coming up soon. But yeah, just I thought it was him and Devontae Smith like equals, and it's absolutely not been the case at all. AJ Brown's been on a tear. He's putting up consistent high fancy numbers, more consistent than Chase, than Lamb, than probably even Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. So he's firmly put himself in that conversation. He's someone that's broke out better than I expected. As a Homer biased Eagles fan as well, that's what really shocked me.
Yeah, I'll make it a third one out of 3, and I'll go someone who I certainly didn't see doing so well. Now, NFL-wise and actual playing-wise, we don't really know, but fantasy-wise, I don't see how the winner isn't Sam Howell, right? Wow. Sam Howell is quarterback 3 right now. I mean, that is incredible, right? I never seen that coming. Now, whether he has a job at the end of the year or not with his new Washington regime, I don't know. But Sam Howell, halfway through the year, being quarterback 3, didn't see it coming at all. So he would be my breakout player. But from that good news, we got to go to some sad news, because this is our bust of the year. Yes, we called Bijan a bust only 2 weeks ago, but we might talk about some other guys. Let's pass it over to Kev. Who you got?
It's Bijan. No, I'm kidding. Calm down, Bijan fans. God, he had a touchdown this week. Chill out. Yeah, this is a guy that I've not seen spoke about as a bust, or very, very little chatter. A lot of it's based on how good he is in real life and how up and coming the franchise is. And I think he gets a really positive rub of the green as such in the community. I think more needs to be said about how poor this guy's been playing this season now. He's not lived up to his expectations. My bust, I've gone for his Trevor Lawrence. I feel that where he was going in Dynasty drafts in round 1, he's not achieved anywhere near that. Despite the improvement in weapons, Ridley, Kirk, Zay Jones when he's been there, Evan Engram, ETN's doing his bit now. They're playing the AFC South, which, Houston are a great story, but it's not a good division. There's none for Richardson. The Titans are on the way out. They should be smashing that division. He should be doing better than he is. And I know it's not all the games against the AFC South, and they won the league, they won the division last year, so they've got a tough schedule. I get all that, but he's not achieving what he needs to fantasy. If you get a tougher schedule, you've got more opportunity to play from behind and put points. He's not doing any of that. His QB 20 in fantasy points per game. He's behind Jordan Love, Joshua Dobbs, the astronaut, Baker Mayfield. He's having a terrible season, and if you've got him as your QB1, you're not happy with that. You're not where you need to be in your Dynasty League, in my opinion. I could have gone Justin Fields. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because he has seen a lot of injuries. But yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence, we need to talk about him more, so he's my boss.
Yeah, whenever I seen that you nominated him, I was like, what, really? And I went and looked at like all of his stats. I was like, oh, you're absolutely spot on. Like he's really not having the best season, even though like the Jags are doing quite well and they're on a bit of a run. I know that like last couple of weeks, maybe not the best, but yeah, Trevor Lawrence fantasy wise, not really doing it. I'm going to stay with the Jags, but I'm not going to pick Trevor Lawrence. I'm going Calvin Ridley. Like, this guy's just pissed me off so much this year, right? Somebody I acquired lots of over the last couple of years with the suspension and everything happening. I just thought in my head, Calvin Ridley is still an elite wide receiver. I can get him at a discount here. This is going to be great. And then he comes out week 1 and just looks unbelievably good. And then he just disappeared. He's just disappeared. He's currently wide receiver 43 on the year. He's averaging 2 points per game less than Kendrick Bourne. I mean, what's going on? Like, it's just so disappointing. He's someone I can no longer even put in my lineups anymore unless I'm absolutely forced to. So Calvin Ridley's my bust of the year. I mean, Ali, you gonna hat trick of Jags here, or what we do?
Evan Ingram. No, you took mine, so I will say another one because I think Ridley's a perfect pick. Mine's gonna be Tony Pollard. He was my bust winner on my tweet that I put out. I just think the expectations, especially just from a personal point of view, were so high for Tony Pollard. We were screaming for more Tony Pollard last year, and now we're screaming for more Rico Dowdle this year because Tony Pollard does not look like the explosive Tony Pollard. He's not I mean, he's getting the workload, but he's not at the same time. His performances have just been pathetic. He's RB 20 on the season, averaging 12.5 PPR points per game, and where he was drafted, that's not what you wanted in return. He's a point ahead of Kyron Williams, who's not played for the past 4 weeks.
Wow.
That just shows you where he is. And it's not going to get any better either because, I mean, we're going to mention one of his teammates in a little while, but they're just passing the ball so much now and it's working for them that they're not going to go back to the ground game unless they really have to. And yeah, it's not great. Tony Pollard for me is a definite bust.
Yeah, I think that all three of those, it's hard to argue against. There's nobody with those three guys in their teams who are just delighted to have them in their team this year. That's absolutely for sure. So let's move on to our final award, but maybe the most important one for Dynasty because these guys are real difference makers for your team. It is the waiver wire pickup award. Someone who was almost certainly, on your waiver wire at the start of the season that you managed to pick up for free and has made a real difference in your team. I'm going to start with my nominee for this. This was an easy one for me. Quarterback 7 on the year. Ahead of, our rookie of the year, CJ Stroud. This guy's outperforming him. He's ahead of him. It's Josh Dobbs. Unbelievable. What a story. I can't wait to watch the movie whenever it inevitably comes out, right? This guy everybody loves him. The pastronaut, you called him earlier, Kev. He's playing out of his skin. He looked great at Arizona and he's moved and we thought, okay, this might be the end of it. He's looked even better at Minnesota and he's sitting up QB7. I don't know where he got those legs from because that's not what I've seen before. He's absolutely killing that. Dual threat, Josh Dobbs, quarterback 7. You got him for free. Anytime you can get a quarterback 1 on your team for free, that's going to win you some prestigious wildcard half-season fantasy awards.
Yeah, and I can't even argue. There's not anybody that I can put forward that tops Josh Dobbs, what he's been doing, and he continues to do in this on his third team now. This season is incredible. He deserves all of these awards just because of how amazing he is. The fact that he beat Arthur Smith as well gives him an extra leg up. And yeah, Josh Dobbs is absolutely balling, just fantastic. Such a great guy as well. And just performing for fantasy with his legs, he's a above average quarterback. I hope he continues to have a team for next season. And yeah, he definitely deserves this award for me.
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely love Josh Dobbs, don't we? I think anybody that's not seen his TikTok account, which I think JJ Zacharyson shared this week, that video with the Creed in the background, unbelievable. Give me goosebumps. Truly quality stuff. Maybe they're going to franchise tag him, jokes. But yeah, I just think he's someone, again, that came out of nowhere that was, I think he looked pretty bad on the Titans last season. And then, yeah, he went to the Cardinals, a bit of a shock. People thought it was going to be Colt McCoy or Clayton Tune or some other dude that was on that team to kick off the season. And yeah, Josh Dobbs got it. And it was a bit of a joke at the start because what he'd shown on the field before that was nothing like he's shown since, like the dual threat ability and how good he's been in a tough situation in Arizona and now a great situation for Minnesota. So really, really obvious to me. He was the one that stood out straight away. If I had to give like a consolation prize, a smaller medal maybe to this guy. I'd probably say Zach Moss, someone that running back 11 on the season. He's had 4 running back 1 weeks while Taylor's out. It all depends how deep your Dynasty league is. If you're playing on your 20-man rosters or something, both of these are on waivers. But if you're playing sort of your Psycho Madman 30-man type rosters, both of these guys are on your teams. But I think they're both really good shouts. But yeah, easily Dobbs.
Yeah, I think we're definitely 3 for 3 there. So congratulations, Josh Dobbs. Who knows? That's maybe the first of many awards that he's going to win this year. So that brings us to the end of our award show. We're going to get into the next 3 topics that we got for you. The first one, I mean, this guy's name might be CeeDee Lamb, but we might have to start calling him CeeDee Goat. Isn't that right, Ali?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of fantasy, Kev's going to love this one because we're talking so highly about a Dallas Cowboys player. But, I mean, not a single player has scored more fantasy points in the last month. No quarterback, nobody. CeeDee Lamb has just been absolutely balling. His points per game in the last 4 games is 31.8 PPR points, which is unbelievable. And even though I went back an extra week, so even the last 5 weeks, he's only played in 4 of those weeks because he's had a bye, and he's still the number 1 fantasy scorer out of all of fantasy. And He's played 1 less week than a lot of them. It's incredible, and it's sort of tied in with, as I mentioned in the awards bit, the Cowboys have changed tack, and their approach is more putting it in the hands of Dak Prescott, airing it out. Someone said, "Hey Dak, you're an above average quarterback. How about you target your elite wide receiver more? Perhaps that could work." Yeah. Just looking at, you can even see where it happened because the first 6 games of the season, CeeDee Lamb averaged 7 targets a game, which that is not elite numbers for any wide receiver. But then you look at since week 8, so there's 3 games, he's averaged nearly 15 targets a game, which is over double his previous 6 games, which puts him right up to wide receiver 5 on the season. And I just see it climbing because they've got a decent schedule, and this approach is just so refreshing, and it's clearly working. Personally, just looking ahead, when you think of CeeDee Lamb, I think that you have to talk about the 2 wide receivers ahead of him in Dynasty. You've got obviously Jahmyr Chase and Justin Jefferson. Everybody has them on a pedestal 1 and 2, but I think it's time to start talking about the 3 wide receivers that are now. I think personally this could be a hot take, but I think they're snapping at their heels. You've got CeeDee Lamb that's putting up these ridiculous scores. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown that's come back and just looked elite. You can't say anything otherwise. And AJ Brown, as Kev mentioned earlier, he's so consistent now, and he's clearly the wide receiver 1 in Philadelphia, putting up in the same amount of touchdowns and catches. I also think Garrett Wilson can get there in the end, but there's certainly these 3 that have broke away. And then how would I rank them? I would actually personally rank CeeDee Lamb at the bottom of these 3. That could be a hot take because I was in a lot today. He's the wide receiver 3. He always was a wide receiver 3. But I just have it ranked slightly differently in the same tier. So I'm really happy with either one of these guys. So I just want to know, Kev, are you going to convince me that CeeDee Lamb should be above the other 2, or would you have it in a tier of 3? And also, how close are these 3 wide receivers now to Justin Jefferson, who's now coming back, and Jahmyr Chase, that's been struggling this season?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's definitely got me thinking. I mean, first of all, it's about CeeDee Lamb, but I just want to talk about Jahmyr Chase, how he gets a little bit by because of his name as well. He had that unbelievable rookie season where he was incredible, like what he did in his rookie season with such a young old Joe Burrow. But I think I need to stop laughing at my own jokes. But yeah, I think despite that, he's not lived up to expectations either. Like, there's been excuses. T. Higgins is injured. T. Higgins is not injured. Burrow's injured. Burrow's not injured. When are we going to stop with this? And you know what? He's not lived up to expectations. He's not on the level of Justin Jefferson for consistency. Yes, he has spike weeks. So does CeeDee Lamb. So does AJ Brown. So does Amon-Ra St. Brown to an extent. So I think people need to have a bit of a think with themselves and think, actually, Jahmyr Chase, does he belong in this tier below rather than in the tier above? Because he's not in the same tier as Justin Jefferson for me. He could get there, but yeah, when Teagan plays, he's good. When he doesn't play, he's good. He's not doing it consistently at that elite level like Jefferson. So I think it's actually a tier of four in that group. I'd still have Chase at the top of it because we know what he can be, and as a prospect, I do think he's better than the other three. But then after that, it's really tricky. I'd probably put Amon-Ra at the bottom just because I feel the consistent ceiling isn't there. And personally, I want ceiling to try and win games as opposed to just try and be solid across the board. So he'd be at the bottom. It's a great problem to have if he is at the bottom. And then Lamb and AJ Brown's tough for me. Like, I'm an Eagles fan. It's an Eagles and a Cowboys player. If I put AJ Brown above CeeDee Lamb, then I'm going to get some stick. But I think it is literally that closest to like who your QBs are or who your wide receivers are could be the decider. If I had to pick one, I'd say AJ Brown just because this season he's been consistently banging it out of the park, whereas CeeDee, a little bit, like I said, a bit of a slow start and then a spike week and then a bit slower. We have to see if he can maintain it. He's had 3 really solid games from targets point of view. I think his target share has improved, which was always a concern. Can he be an alpha type wide receiver? He's doing it. Let's see it for longer. This is the half-season awards. Oh, we've talked about half-season awards tonight. If he has a second half like that, maybe my breakout player is actually CeeDee Lamb and not AJ Brown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Mags, in terms of CeeDee Lamb's long-term outlook, obviously he's still an incredibly young wide receiver, great draft capital on a great offense now. What do you see his outlook being in terms of can he get into the Jefferson Chase tier, or do you think he's now approaching peak value where you would actually sell CeeDee, or do you think he's that close that you would actually sell Jahmyr Chase, Justin Jefferson for CeeDee plus?
I don't think he's a peak. I think his value is kind of just where it was about this time last year, right? I don't think it's peak at all. I think he's been here before. Like, it just feels like he had a bit of a dip, and now he's coming back up to where, you know, we always thought that he should be, which is right up there with, you know, Justin Jefferson and Jahmyr Chase. It just so happens that there are 2 other guys there with him now, with AJ Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I don't see why you would sell him now. If you have CeeDee Lamb, you probably waited for him to get back to this point. It maybe is a bit silly to sell him now unless you can, you know, get AJ Brown plus or maybe even Amon-Ra St. Brown plus. I also don't even know. I think Kevin made a great point. I don't think I'm giving up CeeDee Lamb plus too much to get Jahmyr Chase either. Like, if you can get a chance to go out and get Justin Jefferson, swing for the fences, see what you can do. Like, yeah, but there's not a lot of people that I'm getting rid of CeeDee Lamb for. I think he's just someone you're delighted he's back on form, and hopefully he's going to push you to a championship. And if your team's doing well, don't tinker with it now. Don't try and break it now. Just go win a championship and think about that later.
All right, quick question. Are you taking CeeDee Lamb on your Dynasty roster right now, or would you swap him for the prospect of Marvin Harrison Jr. on your Dynasty team next season?
Wow. No, you need more. Like, that's giving up like the 102 for CeeDee Lamb, right? That's you need more than that, right? It depends. Like, Marvin Harrison Jr., where could he end up? The Bears? I mean, they'll just kill anything, right? That's just, yeah.
Some people will do that trade, you know, because it's all about shiny new toy. Not me, but I think, speaking to a guy that reached out about moving off CeeDee Lamb in a 1QB league, and he was being offered the 102. And I was like, nah, you're not getting Marvin Harrison. It's absolutely pointless. Just, unless it's the 101 and a bit on top, then it's a consideration. But no. So yeah, just be careful with overhyping these rookie prospects like we do every year.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving from a lamb to a lion, and it's the Lion King, or at least he looks like the Lion King right now. It's your friend and mine, Jahmyr Gibbs. Kev, what do you got to say about him?
I mean, I'm a Jahmyr Gibbs truther fan. Slightly biased towards him. I've got a ton of him in Dynasty, so any chance I can get to sort of reaffirm and talk about a hit, I'm going to do that because we don't have misses, but we do really. I think just looking at the last 3 weeks, first of all, he's been so consistent. He's been above 25 points all those 3 games, running back 1, 2, and 3 over those weeks. And its usage on the ground in the past game. And then this week, even with David Montgomery back, he saw rushing touchdown. He saw goal line work as well, which it was one of the big things we thought they would always be off the field. He's starting to see some of that now. It's spookily following a very similar rookie season to Alvin Kamara, where the first 3 or 4 games it was a little bit touch and go, and then bang, it happened. He was so consistent the rest of that season. He's had such a consistent career. I think Gibbs on pace for 80 plus receptions now, which is what we thought it would be. He's got a pretty favourable schedule the next 5 or 6 weeks as well. So short term is fantastic. I think David Montgomery is a compliment at the moment to him because I don't think you want him getting 25 touches. I know he had a 25 rush game a couple of weeks back, but I prefer him getting that 18 to 20 sort of and a lot of pass usage. So I think last 3 weeks he's been amazing. Running back 10 on the season in fantasy points per game. Before the season, he was my running back 2 in Dynasty. I know I mentioned CMC as number 1, which I think is fair because I play for this season next season. But actually, if I'm reassessing, reevaluating, not thinking about names or who looks good on highlights, Jahmyr Gibbs for me is still my running back 2 above Bijan now. Because I'm thinking this season, next season, there's a commitment to Arthur Smith from the Falcons. They've come out this week and said there's that commitment there. I don't want anything to do with Bijan at his current price because it's too much. I'd rather have Gibbs over Bijan in Dynasty as it stands. I want to know if you guys are there, if it's something you're considering, if it's something you need to think about. So, yeah, come to you first, Mags. Gibbs, are you as high as me on him in Dynasty? And if you are contending, what are you going to do to get him?
Yeah, I mean, we are coming up to Christmas, and we know that the 3 wise men brought gifts of gold, frankincense, and Jahmyr, right? I don't quite have him as high as you do, Kev. I can't quite put him ahead of Bijan, but you know, I'm sort of more conservative with him. Right? I kind of move people up and down quite slowly. I've got him pretty much neck and neck with good old Devon Achane over there. I can't quite decide who's ahead of another yet. We'll have to see what he does whenever he comes back. But he's top 5. That is absolutely for sure. And that's including stinking the place up for a couple of weeks, really, right? Like people were all the way out on him. So if he's still all the way up there, I expect him to sort of slowly start creeping into that top 3 territory for sure. I mean, as for what you would pay for him right now, you're going to need, like we talked about, it's a king's ransom right now. He's looking really, really good. You're going to get some people thinking they can get him for 2 firsts. That's not happening. Like, it's 2 firsts plus, someone who can slot into your lineup to replace him, like a veteran player that, I mean, someone like even Austin Eckler, we can even go that far. Like, someone that's going to replace him and make your team a contender right away. And you're not going to lose too much value this year. Plus, you're getting long-term gain. But he's another guy like CeeDee Lamb. Why the hell would you sell him? Like, if he's playing well in your team, why are you gonna try and fix it? Unless you're somehow, someone who's got a terrible team with Gibbs in it, and you really need to sell and keep rebuilding, then sure, see what you can get for him. But I mean, most likely you're doing quite well if Gibbs is in your team and playing as well as he has been the last few weeks. So yeah, I think 2 firsts plus a real good replacement. If you're rebuilding, try and get a young wide receiver. You might even be lucky enough to get some of those guys we talked about earlier. Can you go out and use Gibbs to get CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Brown? That's what I'd be doing if I'm trying to rebuild. But I mean, good luck getting those guys as well. A guy like this is so hard to move, and he's so hard to buy. So he's probably just going to end up staying on your team.
He's such a true professional, Max, because you answered the contender part about how you go and buy him. But I'm going to come to Ali now and just see where you're ranking him. And on the flip side, you're rebuilding. What are you doing to sell him? What are you selling for?
It's a difficult one because he's so young into his NFL career to be wanting to sell him. But if you are a rebuilder and there is going to be contenders coming after him because he's fantastic now and for the future. I always start my rebuilders by trying to sell my running back, especially the ones that have lots of value. So he'd be on the block. Firstly, I have him ranked as RB4. I've got him below Bijan, below Christian McCaffrey, and below Breece Hall. But at the start of the season, Bijan was in his own category, his own tier, but he's now dropped into the tier. So I've got a tier of 4. So they are in the same tier, but he's just my running back 4. So he's slightly ahead of A-Chain. I am really interested to see him come back, hopefully this week, because he could enter that tier for me. But moving to selling him for on a rebuilder, I think Mags has answered the question. It really.
Sorry, I got carried away. I got to it, so I couldn't stop myself.
It's a hot topic, so don't blame me, Mags. But yeah, I would always on a rebuilding side, if you're not going to get picks, and really, if they're coming at you with 2 picks plus, 2 first-round picks plus, they're most likely going to be late picks. That doesn't interest me. So I'm going to ask for a young wide receiver. I'd love them to have Chris Olave, someone that's struggling perhaps this year, a Devonta Smith, someone like that. Drake London, perhaps, that isn't really helping a contender, but will help me on a rebuilder. So if you can ask for one of those wide receivers plus, I think that's the way to go in terms of selling Gibbs to help your team and just to keep nice and young.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely. Could have said it better myself, Ali. Absolutely. And now moving on to our final topic of the day, and it's something that's always quite topical in Dynasty Fantasy Football. It's what do you do with injured players? Because every year, at every position, seemingly, we have injuries, right? And I think it's an important thing to speak about. It is different, like an injury, even if it's literally the exact same injury. It is different depending on what position they play and what kind of player they are as well. Like if we look at the Achilles, right? We've got Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers out at quarterback with an Achilles. That doesn't mean anywhere near as much as it does for poor old J.K. Dobbins, who's got the Achilles, or Cam Akers, who's got the Achilles as well at running back. Like those two guys, their value plummets so much more than the quarterbacks do. You don't really see the Achilles too much at wide receiver, but I still wouldn't say that would be as devastating as it would be for a running back. I think in general, you're looking at quarterbacks, you're wanting to try and avoid any kind of shoulder injuries. They're a big red flag for me, usually. At running back, you're looking at those Achilles injuries for sure. Wide receivers, you're looking more at like those muscle injuries, like big hamstring injuries that are reoccurring or knee injuries that are reoccurring. So I think it is important to try and really look into what is the injury. Is it recurring? There's some great websites out there. I think there's one called Draft. Is it Draft Shark? I think maybe that actually shows you how many injuries a player has had and exactly where it has been and how often it has recurred. So I'd be out there using these tools and using these great websites to have a look at, what is affecting this player before you go out and decide to try and sell them or try and buy them. And Ali, I'll come to you first on this. How do you sort of manage this if you have an injured player on your team? Do you try and sell low on them and get them out of there, or hold them, or you just say if you want to buy them, you can buy them, but there's no discount? I'm imagining that they're just, they'll be fine and pick up right where they left off when they're back.
Yeah, I think you just have to be realistic. I think you have to, as you just mentioned, there's plenty of websites, plenty of people on Twitter. There's some not so good people on Twitter that think they're at Fantasy Doctor or something stupid like that. But there is some good ones on there that will give you a realistic time frame for when these people can come back. So I think you have to not act too quickly. You have to be a bit reserved. You have to just be calm about the situation. Obviously, if you're a contender, you need to try and get that player off and replace them, especially at quarterback where we've seen some injuries, quite a few injuries this year. I think you have to try and replace and just take whatever you can to try and get another player back. But you just have to, not act too quickly. And just, I think you have to be realistic. If your situation where you're not a contender, I'm really happy having injured players on my roster who are not putting up points for me. They're going to get me a better draft pick at the end of the day. I'm happy to actively buy injured players and take a risk. But in terms of selling them, I think you just have to go with the situation that you're in. If you are a contender, you have to replace them. You probably have to take low value, and it might pain you, but then that is the price you pay to continue to be a contender and to try and win the championship, which is what we're all trying to do. It just differs if you're a middling team or if you're a rebuilding team. I think your strategy definitely changes big time, but it's a really interesting topic because there's been every single year there's so many injured players, especially key ones. The Justin Jefferson. I've got a team that's got Justin Jefferson, Dave Montgomery, Devon A-Chain, Darren Waller, and somebody else that's all had massive injuries, and it is a massive struggle, especially when you're trying to be a contender at the same time. So I think I'm going to sit on the fence a little bit and just say it just depends on your situation.
Yeah, I think you might be quoting our Dynasty Grill League One that we remember of Holly Words. I think my team has Jefferson, Richardson, Dobbins, and so anyone who's out for the season, I got them. But yeah, I agree with you. And Kev, I'll bounce you sort of the opposite. If you're trying to buy somebody, who has an injury, obviously Ali kind of covered there. Like if you're rebuilding, you can buy these guys and take a risk. But is there ever a time where you're a contender and you're like, I'm going to go buy this injured guy?
I mean, first of all, you touch on a great point that there's a general theme in Dynasty that contenders buy and rebuilders sell. And I think there is that opportunity there to zag when people are zigging. So like your contender can actually sell and pivot down, but your rebuilder can actually take, as Ali said, a risk and go after someone. It could be someone that's injured. It fits the bill really well. I think when you're trying to buy these injured players, you've kind of got to get you in the thought process of what that owner is going to be trying to do. And their number one option is likely, because this is most people, they're trying to scrimp and get a replacement on the cheap, because first thing that happens is you get an injured player, value plummets. And it's really tough as someone that has injured players to think, actually, I can't get what his value was a couple of days ago. I'm going to have to give a discount. The other team has all the leverage because they have an asset that I need. So that's why they will avoid that situation and try and go to a cheaper alternative. So I think if you're trying to buy, just be aware that don't take the piss. Give them a fair offer, because if you do lowball them, they're automatically leaning towards going for a cheap option anyway. And that's what they're probably going to try and do. So do something that's fair. But yeah, you should be, if you're a rebuilder, you should be taking on plenty of shots on injured players, because of, that as long as they show health, the value is going to then increase for you to either keep it and using your rebuild, or then play hot potato and move it again once they're back on the field. So prioritize it as a rebuilder. It's one of the best ways to value spike, but also don't be lowballing people. Right, we know the talent's there. Understand what the owners are going to want to do and try and work with them on that, as opposed to, I've got the leverage, I hold all the chips, you have to come to my level. Just be fair.
Yeah, don't be like in Captain Phillips being like, that guy's like, I am the captain now, right? That guy, you don't want to be, take complete control, right? And that brings us to the end of this very special, award-riddled show. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening as we had a little look at week 10 of the Dynasty season. If you're not already, hey, make sure you're going over on X and following us at Fantasy Wildcard, and of course over here at Wildcard Dynasty. And hey, check us out on YouTube as well. Look for that Fantasy Wildcard Podcast Network. Hope you enjoyed the show. We're here next Tuesday. We're reviewing week 11 already. Cannot believe it. Hope you guys enjoyed the show.